Welcome into the Striker Texas MLS show. My name is Chris Bils, filling in for John Arnold as he recovers from what I'm sure was a wild bachelor party weekend. So congrats to John. And we've got Phil West in here joining in, and Victor Araiza, of course, from Houston. We'll get into all the matches, but at first, we gotta start out on a somber note because since the last time we recorded, probably the worst event we've had in quite some time in the state of Texas, the shooting in Uvalde. And, we all live in this world. We all, live in Texas and are proud to live here. But there are days that make you question, I think the leadership in this state and where we are as a society. And this is certainly one of them, 21 dead in Uvalde, Texas. And, I am heartened to see the reaction from the soccer community. Got to give a shout out to Los Verdes, the Austin FC supporters group that put out a fundraiser that's now, I think, up over $200,000. So, that's just incredible to see that response. And, of course, the Texas teams wore, and all their opponents wore, a patch on their jerseys. And, moments of silence around the league. Hopefully, one of these days we won't have to do moments of silence and patches and all that stuff. But guys, I just kind of wanted to open the floor and start there because I think, we'd be doing a disservice to not bring attention to something that I think is on all of our minds.
Yeah, I just want to, a couple things, there's so much on my mind around that. Like I wrote in my column, obviously it is heartening. The one I put up on Friday, it's very heartening to see the soccer community coming together and helping out with this because, again, it's definitely a time of need and any kind of gesture is appreciated. And, especially for Los Verdes to take the lead and for, fans to come in so quickly on that and get that up and get that rolling and get that publicized was just kind of a testament to what they can do organizationally. But I was just thinking about it. It was less than 3 years ago. It was the El Paso shooting after that where Ali Bedoya went into, he scored a goal in a game against DC and then he grabbed a mic and he said, "End gun violence now." And nothing's happened. There's more shootings. And I had to look up because there have been so many. It's like, okay, was this El Paso? I think it was, but I had to do a little research because there's just such a huge list of these mass shootings with AR-15s and we'd like to get rid of them, but until that, it's good. It's good that we respond as a soccer community to those kind of tragedies, but are those tragedies preventable and avoidable? And if they are, as I think they are, because assault weapons bans worked in the past before they were allowed to lapse in 2004, something needs to be done.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. I think, this is, enough, right? Enough is enough with we're 10 years after Sandy Hook and this is still a problem. A couple of years ago here in Houston, right? Santa Fe was in 2018, schools, theaters, supermarket just a couple of weeks ago, right? It's, there's, what else can you say about these kinds of things? We hope these things can change. I keep saying, I guess, use your power to vote, right? If you're not on board with what's going on, vote people out. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you are. It's just my thing sometimes has always been like, even incumbents, at some point just, because at the end of the day, we, like you said, we're all living this life. Those kinds of decisions affect your daily lives, and it, what sucks is just that it gets to this point, right? That how can it not even be safe to go to an elementary school?
I know.
Yeah,
as somebody who's
or a Walmart.
My mom's a high school teacher, and I think it just kind of that's what hits home for me every time one of these happens. Is she's going to school, going to work every day, trying to make an impact on kids' lives, and just at the thought that maybe she might not come home one day is just it touches everybody, right? We all went to school at some point. We all have walked those hallways. We've all walked through doors. I tweeted. I've tweeted a lot of things in the last week, but I grew up in a small town and very conservative town. Guns are maybe even more than when I grew up. It's an issue that I think that people get very stuck to, but also we had our school doors were unlocked every single day. We would sneak out and go get Taco Bell, go get donuts, go get whatever. And, if I would have had to walk through and past an armed security guard to leave school or come back to school, I just think that my experience would have been completely different. And when I think about my mom and the impact that she's made on so many kids' lives, I think the way that we can all make an impact every single day is just by being a little bit kinder, being a little bit softer. I've been reading the stories out of Uvalde and this kid, this 18-year-old kid who, obviously did something that is unspeakable and incomprehensible, I think. But, people were calling him a school shooter when he was, 16, 17 years old. And just step up, every day in your life, step up and lead and put a stop to those types of sentiments. I think that, obviously gun violence, obviously bullying, obviously all those things need to be done. But I don't know. That's just what keeps coming back to me is just this world. We can all hate and we can all yell, but we can also love a little bit more. So I don't know. That's just my thoughts. And, we got to move on to some soccer and it's a hard transition to make, but I hope that, every single time we get back on this podcast, we can start with soccer and not start with something like this, but
Right.
It is what it is. But I mean, we'll start with the highlights in Texas MLS. FC Dallas continues to roll. They're on top of at least as far as Texas goes, on top of the table right now. And Paul Araiza, Phil, I know you had a chance to ask.
Marcos de Oliveira taking charge tonight of his 70th
it's
game in his pro career.
I voted for him for Player of the Month.
He blows the whistle. Mauricio Pereira kicks us off. We are underway in Orlando. 2 or 3 minute passages has gone back and forth.
No clear chances
Phil,
for
what you
anybody.
see from,
They're trying to feel the other team, see how they can really hurt them and leave it here.
Flag is down. Ariola shot. Big save. Galese. Cleared away by Smith.
They're on the road.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was kind of a tough match for them because Orlando
Pereira
scored a goal right before halftime. Same player that
Pereira in a good spot here. Pereira shoots past.
But Ariola led a 3-goal
palms it over the
in the
line.
second half. Franco Jara was part of that too. Kind of sandwiched in between the two Ariola goals. But yeah, absolutely impressive. So he's now
Whipped
got
in near post.
6 goals in the last 5 matches. Certainly heading into the international break along with his teammate. Jesus Pereira looking obviously really, really good for him and his chances. And I know that there's a lot of Ariola haters out there, but I think he's just such a solid contributor, and he does so many little things well. A lot of intangibles. Yeah, we talked a little bit post-match, jumped in on a press conference. First of all, Nico Esteves talking about Ariola's performance, basically says, yeah, this is guys here, this is guys invested, called him the best winger in the league, talked about being really, and Ariola kind of downplayed that when I asked him about
homegrown designated player in the history of the league, opting to stay in Dallas rather than go to Europe. What a ball by Juan. This is to Pereira.
Stay healthy. And that was a really important thing because when Ariola was scoring his 2 goals, same time kind of the other side of MLS there.
Popped up by Urso. Carl watching it down the bicycle kick.
Georgia Mihailovic, who is an MVP candidate this year, and looked like he was on his way to a well-deserved June camp.
Here comes the counter for FC Dallas. Here's Velasco. Out to Ferreira, making the run hard down the side. So that's Franco Jara, who's all the way out there. Jara for Ferreira. Finds Ariola.
Talked about that.
And he roofs it to tie the game.
His sensitivity around trying to stay healthy, that's obviously very important. Given Mihailovic, and then
Dallas player to do so since Jeff Cunningham in 2009.
Achilles injury that's
Franco Jara here coming in.
Out of Velasco.
Also, doesn't help the U.S.
Give back to him. Back heel.
Yeah, certainly. When we head into an international break, I think, you bring up a good point. I think Paul Ariola has been sort of one of those lightning rods as far as his form. But the thing I've always said about him is exactly where
Orlando City's got to find a way to stop the bleeding here. Ferreira over the top for Franco Jara. Touches it down. Little chip. It's into the back of the net. The flag stays down. What a goal from Franco Jara.
What he's bringing,
who has put himself back on the map for FC Dallas tonight.
Really
it's
culture.
Kyle Smith tries to leave Jara
I can't
offside,
be more impressed with the way
he doesn't do it. And
Down the line again for Araiza.
Start. All three Texas teams above the playoff line.
Goes out nicely to him. Araiza with the first goal tonight for Dallas.
International break.
Has a strike. Alexei misses it completely, and Dallas kills the game off. Paul Araiza.
No, and it's the ambition, right? I mean, obviously, Araiza benefits a lot from just a new start, a fresh start, and Dallas, right, coming from that mess
from the player. Let's take a look here. Nevertheless, that's a very difficult strike, and Pedro Araiza does not get
the expectations. So,
here is O'Brien.
What DC United should be, right?
O'Brien to the middle. Shot is blocked by his own teammate. Araiza has a hat trick.
It's been ambitious, but maybe now it's finally putting forth the money, right?
No, he doesn't.
And by the way, the big money signing Velasco came
handball,
back from,
no goal
protocol in this game, right? Now it brings up again.
That'll do it.
Maybe the
FC Dallas
side, right?
Goes into the break on a high note.
1 goal, 1 assist.
They snapped their 2-game losing streak. Paul Araiza, 5 goals in 5 matches.
Any defense in MLS, whenever you have to face them, and again, I think a good game for Jara himself, right? It all just kind of starts coming together. It's FC Dallas has had very few bad results. We talked about their unbeaten streak that they had. Even the 2-game losing stretch, I mean, we can kind of pinpoint to one thing or another, right? Velasco being out, the goalkeeper as well, Pais being out as well, and you see Esteves also. He may be in his first year in MLS, right, as a head coach, but he brings that experience, and you can see the what he brings in head coaching experience. Obviously, has a support of a coaching staff, I think, different from what we see in Austin with Josh Wolf and in Houston with Paulo Nagamura. And all that comes together to just, bring a high caliber operation at FC Dallas, and we'll see if it just lasts throughout the whole year. But it looks like it so far.
Yeah, definitely. I was just going to say definitely more settled than the end of last year, right? So with Gonzalez going out and the coaching change there, and it looked like it was in complete disrepair by season's end. But what a difference, a coaching change, and a few key players slotting in to FC Dallas and their fortunes. And I just got to say real quick on the highlights. If you're watching this on video, it is all white versus blue. It was Prime Blue weekend, and I've got to say just how absolutely difficult it is to follow multiple games when everybody is white against blue. It is so hard.
Well, at least on this one they gave Orlando purple.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that on Sunday because I was, obviously at the Austin FC LA Galaxy match, and I was like thinking about like somebody flipping on 2day and be like, "Oh, I already saw this game yesterday." I'm just like, way to help your TV ratings, guys. But it's FC Dallas goes into this break second in the West behind LAFC, 25 points, 7-3-4 record, 7 wins, 3 losses, 4 ties, and. The other thing that stands out, which I'm not sure we've mentioned on this podcast, but we've certainly, I think, batted around on some coverage on the Striker Texas, is that FC Dallas is now 9th in MLS in spending when it comes to roster spend, and I think that is something that we haven't seen in maybe the history of this franchise. When you talk about maybe back when there was 12 teams in the league, but for them to be 9th of 28 in spending. And going out and getting guys like Paul Araiza, obviously we've talked ad nauseum about the moves that they've made, but making
Araiza becoming a designated player.
Yeah, making use of those those players that have gone abroad, particularly Ricardo Pepi and the allocation money that they've gotten from that. And I think it's a good sign for FC Dallas that this is sustainable, right? As we talk about, I think that's what we're going to talk about with Austin FC and Houston Dynamo. How sustainable is where they're at in the table. I think for FC Dallas, you've got to say that they've got a pretty good shot of carrying this all season long.
Right, and plus still one of the best academies in the league, so that they're going to generate players that if nothing else they can sell on. So, but
moving on, the other two teams in Texas, Austin FC and Houston Dynamo, did not fare so well this weekend.
Did they play? I completely forgot. And somehow LA and RSL got points over the weekend. That was strange. So
yeah,
let's talk about these games are blotting from my memory.
We'll get to Victor's trip to Utah. I'm sure he had a great time in the mountains, results aside. But we'll start in Carson, California, where Austin FC played
MLS via SAP. And of course on Twitter, we are on with the first 45 minutes of action again. The Galaxy in that blue uniform, Austin, as are all Texas clubs. Houston Dynamo, FC Dallas, of course,
it's pretty shambolic defending
with a patch
still,
on their chest, on their heavy hearts.
The break comes at a good time.
And it will be a penalty kick. A minute and 48 seconds in.
Things to come.
As far as contact perhaps made between Javier and Tata Martino, will we see him in Qatar? We're certainly going to see him right now. Trying to strike against Brad Stuber. It's Chicharron. It's saved by Stuber. Not the best take by the all-time leading scorer of El Tri.
Not the best take from Javier Hernandez. Not a lot of power.
Yeah, well, this was always going to be a really tough stretch for them when we looked at the schedule and just seeing what opponents were doing versus in April. But yeah, I mean, this is obviously. I mean, there was such a horrid late game collapse in this one. And yeah, I mean, I think a reset. I think everybody just kind of go their separate ways. Maybe a little bit of time. Turn their heads might be good as they come back. I mean, it's going to be another tough stretch.
Take another look.
I asked
when he anticipates and gets to that ball first, there is a slight.
Yeah, he was saying that basically that this is not.
Well, that was sensationally done. Initially, back for Austin in the box. Looks like a foul. It's not called. Fagundes can have a shot. He does.
Pull out, at least results, if not
absolute beauty
to keep it close. I mean, there's still fourth in the table, totally respectable. I mean, if you asked, I think Austin FC fans all over, if they would be satisfied with this kind of place
value his
at
options
this point in the season.
And he didn't have many, so he decided to go with the shot.
Yeah, we can see
last season.
Positioned his body.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But still, it's I mean, it's disheartening to see, again, one goal turn into two, turn into three, turn into four.
Good ball for Araujo. Julian is on. Araujo.
And some of them
thought about it. Now he will. It's a good one. There's a beach. And then Chicharito. That's a Gomeza.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then getting the 1-0 lead with the loss from Fagundes. It just seemed like everything was kind of going their way.
Right.
Does that make it feel more of a missed opportunity?
For me,
I think so, and I think that was sort of the feeling I got out
from the LA Galaxy.
As well as
perfectly
that, they knew that they
crossed
weren't
by
playing the best
Julian,
game,
and then how smart is that so far?
We're getting
clearly
away with it, right?
during some lapses of the game, haven't been able to
3-4
capitalize until now.
You got to put one back in the back.
The Galaxy.
Here's a cross.
Jovalic, yes, too
all those
easy.
problems, all those warning signs.
And within a matter of minutes,
Austin FC did play.
It's 2-1 for Los Angeles.
But when they turned it over, and Brad Stuber did a good job of explaining this too, you can read
it hits his chest.
They
and
were
then
doing
he
a
has
good job
nothing
of,
to do but put it in right in front of the goalkeeper.
We've seen this.
To give the LA Galaxy the second goal of the game.
Where teams are letting Austin FC have the ball, but not letting them have
first loss since May 14th against Real
because
Salt
Austin is
here's an opportunity. Oh yes,
so attack-minded.
Take another look at this goal. That means game over.
When they have the ball with Jerussi,
try to flip it over.
And Alex
has a little bit of.
In this game, Owen Wolf.
They go up to
Maxi
Montreal.
Ricci, those guys are all
game, and then
around, but when they turn
here at
the
home
over
against
that
Dallas.
Spot, that means that
oh, look at this! This is a 4-1 game.
Yeah, it's up to the fullbacks then to sort of clean things up. And
anything you want.
Jean Komenich looked on a few of these plays.
Little bit of magic with the assist, and the 4-1 is more in sync with what we saw.
That's it.
4-1,
ladies and gentlemen. 94 minutes past. Muriel Vasquez calls it. Statement win for the Los Angeles Galaxy at home against Austin, one of the better clubs in the West.
The best players in the league at those positions, but I think those are some positions that I asked Josh Wolf after the game, if they were going to maybe address that, whether it's fullback or some other positions, and he certainly didn't roll it out. I think it's this summer is a chance to make a stamp of, what kind of club does this want to be? Do they want to go after, a playoff spot in the top four, or do they just kind of want to, ride what they've got and see where it leaves them? And I think that they've got a chance here if they can make some good moves. If they've been doing their homework, they could really fill in some gaps. So a lot to talk about there, but one thing I did want to touch on the positive side is Owen Wolf, but I'll let Victor, you start there.
I was going to say, how much is it? I mean, does it also play into fans look at what the other two Texas teams did, right? FC Dallas went in there and essentially manhandled them and finished things off early. Houston just went there, the week prior and won 3-0.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. It's a good point. I mean, I think that we were talking about it, sort of joking last week that Texas teams were undefeated in California, maybe or undefeated in LA. Maybe we sort of jinxed it with that comment, but I mean, LA Galaxy is certainly, proving to be a good team, but they've got their own problems and they've gone through, sort of, their own trials with the fans sort of wanting some change there. And so there's no games that you should be losing 4-1 if you're
that place was like 75% full the week before. It looked like it was empty this week. I mean, I guess
I was there, and I will say that I got the same comment from a few people sort of looking at TV. I will say that the camera points into the sun, and this isn't an excuse, right? Because clearly it wasn't a full stadium. But the sides in the shade and the supporters section were much more full. They announced 20,000. I don't think it was 20,000. But it wasn't as empty.
That may be it too, because the Houston game was like a 5 p.m. local kickoff. This one was like 3 p.m.
It was 1 p.m. So it was.
No,
it was 3. It was 3. I got there at 1. It was 3 o'clock. 3 p.m. Pacific time. I'm still getting used to time zones. Simple math, but I didn't go to college for that. So
time zones are the worst. But just looking at the highlights, you heard me when I was audibly groaning there in the background. I was just looking at the goal, the second one, and he's a good young striker, but still, I think I learned this as a 6-year-old. Like, you do not clear a ball to the middle, especially when there is U22 initiative, pretty solid strikers standing right in the way, ready to pounce forward, which is exactly what he did.
It's a great stadium too for that analogy, because there's always like youth teams that are watching those games, and I'm just thinking about youth teams watching MLS games in general and turning to their coach like an 8-year-old and being like, "Why do they do that? I thought you told me never do that on a soccer field." And the coach is throwing their arms up because I saw some shambolic defending at Baker, California on Saturday night too,
you can do that when you're a grown up.
Yeah, Renee Van de Zanda is just looking at it and is like, "This looks like men's league," and I'm just like, I mean, I have no arguments for you on some of these plays. So,
I mean, obviously, it's a bigger, it's a whole other deal. But what do you guys think? You think they move on to Celio and try to open up that DP spot and try to do something there?
I was about to go there as well. You can go read all of our coverage of the Striker Texas, but since the last time we talked on this podcast, I put out a piece, sort of exploring a little bit more into Cecilio Dominguez's past, 2016 charges that I think have been sort of danced around and talked about, maybe on social media, but taking some time and digging through those news reports in Spanish from Paraguay in 2016 and 2017. And talking to some folks and talking to Austin FC about, and MLS about what they knew. And, through talking to some sources, I feel pretty confident. And, I believe at this point that they just missed it, guys. They missed, pretty big detail in a very marquee player's past. And I think that it's worth noting as well that this was the first designated player for Austin FC. It was the second ever signing. It was a guy that they paid a multi-million-dollar transfer fee. And, the responsibility there, I think, lies with Claudio Reyna and his scouting staff that, they weren't able to sort of do the full digging that maybe you would expect. Not maybe. I think that you have to expect, right? And I think that that's a big learning lesson for this club. And the next question is, where do they go from here? Do they, I think there's several paths that they could take, and I think I'll write more about this, about why it's so important and why, this club has maybe more to answer for than a club that's been around for 20 or 100 years, is that, Austin FC fans and supporters helped bring this club, they helped, get the stadium built. They helped bring this club into town. And I think that they do feel like they have a say in the culture and how they're represented. And this is the first real chance. And I think that's why there's been so much noise and so much anxiety and apprehension around, does he play again? And I don't really have any answers for you at this point. I can tell you he's been in training. I can tell you that Austin FC cannot further punish him. He was out for 5 weeks. Joshua basically called it an off season. He's been training. He's been back with the full squad, has not traveled to an away game yet. And now as we head toward June, they'll have this Pachuca match, and then they'll have a trip to Montreal. And if he doesn't play in those 2 matches, I think you start to ask even more questions about, are they trying to sell him? Will he play again? And, I guess maybe I should throw it to you guys after reading the details in my piece that was on the Striker Texas last week. Does that change, or does that sort of help inform your own opinions or your own thoughts about maybe what this situation means for Austin FC and its fans and MLS as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I remember that was kind of floating out there when he got signed. I mean, I remember kind of peripherally that, yeah, there was some kind of checkered past that he had, which now.
Well, I think, and I wrote a little bit about this in the piece, in a quote from Claudio Reyna in 2020, in August of 2020, when he signed. A lot of the talk around Cecilia was, about how focused he might be on the pitch. A lot of fans at America, and I'm sure, Victor, and a lot of fans at Independiente even that questioned, his dedication. And I sort of asked about that, and asked about, and part of Claudio Reyna's response to that in 2020, not even touching any domestic violence or criminal accusations. That's not what the question was, but I think he pretty adamantly said there were no red flags that they found, or not. I think that's literally part of the quote.
Right. But like you said, I think the conversation back then was about maybe like lack of discipline as a player, not off-field conduct as it relates to something like domestic violence. And I think that would have probably raised a different conversation. And one thing is, I think in MLS, it hasn't gone to that point, right? Like other pro leagues, like maybe in the NFL and the NBA, this would be a bigger conversation, or just maybe more. There would have been maybe more investigating because of, again, a bigger media coverage. Obviously, in Latin American countries, this is some kind of thing that gets glossed over a little bit because of the power of the clubs there regionally, and it's a different situation. And I also think, like in MLS, there's obviously been a change over the last couple of years, and especially with the Andy Polo situation up in Portland. I mean, that has also played that has kind of changed the landscape a little bit. And in all these are factors, right? And I think, and the biggest one too, and I think Austin fans deserve credit for this, is that Austin has a big fan base, a vocal fan base that has decided to use their influence or just their status to push this conversation. I think I can bring it kind of closer to Houston, right? Cubo Torres, whenever he went on loan to Chivas, he came back with a rape allegation, and it didn't necessarily get picked up. It wasn't a conversation. It wasn't something that was brought up. And I don't know if that's because if it's a before or after the Andy Polo situation, or if it's simply because the Houston fan base, it's not that same type of woken fan base where if it had happened in a Seattle, in a Portland type of a club, it would have had more attention. It would have had more people asking questions. It would have had more media outlets asking. And I think, that's part of it too.
Yeah, but there's also been, like, recently, there's been concerns about Thiago Almada before he came to Atlanta, and kind of some concerns there. And the club basically says that they've checked it out, but I know there are still fans in that fan base that are very, very concerned about him being on the team, and about that not being like completely cleared up. And again, like, Jessica Luther and the good work that she's done. I mean, clearing something up in terms of criminal allegations, doesn't really mean anything, like, given, how many allegations that women make against men are true. Like, very few of them are false accusations. So that raises all kinds of red flags. And like she's also said, the criminal justice system is not, and policing is not very well equipped to deal with these kind of issues.
Yeah.
No, and we're talking, and I imagine in that case, I mean, she's talking about here in the United States. That's what I'm saying. I mean, now you look at these investigations, these reports out of like Paraguay, right, or even in Mexico. I mean, it's countries where these clubs are super powerful, that they just kind of make these kinds of things go away, right? So, and that's why it's even even a bigger ups to you, Chris, to finding that, piecing that together and kind of organizing it a little bit. And again, not going to the fact that there's something out there to begin with.
Yeah. Well, thanks, and I think we'll leave it there. But if you want more details and more of the nitty gritty on exactly what we're talking about here, I'd certainly encourage you to go. If you're not subscribed already, go use that 30-day free trial and piece, because there's a lot of nuance and a lot of details that we maybe didn't get into in this conversation. But we got to move on and move on to Houston. And I feel you have one more thing.
One more quick point. I mean, I think it's telling, and maybe this will show in the timeline, that Cecilia was the only senior player that did not make the extended road trip to RSL in LA. I think that's kind of interesting. That could have theoretically been a point where he would have reintegrated with the team in that way. They didn't do that. I don't know if that's maybe a subtle hint that he's for sale and they're trying to move on from him. But we'll have to kind of see and piece that together. But like you said, yeah, I mean, it's this next juncture with the Pachuca game and then the Montreal game away. I mean, that'll be really telling too. Is that a time where they're going to try to bring him into the roster, or are they still trying to shop him?
For sure, and we'll continue to monitor that on the Striker Texas. Also on the Striker Texas, you can find Victor's coverage of the Houston Dynamo. He was out in Utah for a 3-0 loss.
But there's just been a real positive vibe about what Pablo Mastroeni has brought here to this club since taking over a year ago from Freddy Juarez. We're underway.
Yeah.
Real Salt Lake.
Yeah, you've been traveling.
And Houston Dynamo tonight from Rio Tinto Stadium.
But so
Rapids
not on that trip.
Hammered early. At home tonight, Commerce sitting. Ball in, Ruiz punched out, loose in front. Deflected wide and cleared by Bear.
The same roster that went to Kansas City.
Herrera throwing that shoulder around. Here come the Dynamo.
Which maybe you can bring up
3v4.
Should they have sacrificed this game
anyway? Box shot. Big save by McMahon. Dives to his left to come up with a save.
Beto Avila, by the way.
Nobody for Houston on the other end of it. So well done by Zach. Here comes Wood. Bobby plays it well.
That didn't really, not just him.
Wood. Bobby Wood.
And then eventually, Scarlett broke his back, right? Bobby Wood gets on
the back of the net. Michael Chang, another helper. Bobby Wood on mark. Houston, we have a problem.
This was the one that went in. There was a couple more opportunities in the first half. RSL could have been up.
Wood wide. That's Chang.
So I think Houston actually got a little lucky in getting to halftime with a 1-0 lead.
Nelson took the deflection, came off his line, and stopped Bobby Wood.
Or lack of good decision making, right? Alberto Carrasquilla
Chang in a wide position
after picking up double
takes
yellow.
A deflection, corner to the wide.
Fireman.
Oh, Sergio!
Right? And here in this game, we don't see it in the highlights, but he gets a yellow card again, and maybe come back into that kind of situation.
Just wide.
There was a scuffle maybe at the end of the first half.
For the personality of Darwin Quintero, but you can see snapshots and glimpses, even at 34
I'm seeing a lot of chances in this highlight reel.
Exquisite player.
Yeah, Steve, but he wasn't part of this game.
McMath has been extraordinary this season.
The day of the Open Cup game.
Ulfarsson, snap down header, skips it off the grass, and Zach McMath down to his right-hand side.
Again, you can see the
Look at this push. That is fantastic from Zach McMahon.
Oh my gosh. Alligator arms done set. That's what we used to call him after matches when we go out for dinner. Here's Quintero. Through ball.
There were chances eventually, right?
Pasher and shot wide. Oh, Pasher.
We're starting to get that time. Starting to get that time for Pablo to start catching for
Here's
a cross, Loffelson. Top of the box. Cordova. Touch once, touch twice.
You don't know what you're going to get. And here, you see it from Cordova and RSL. Just the poise in front of goal, right? Just kind of
second in his many weeks. And it's 2-0.
That's kind of what this is missing.
Salt Lake. Salt Lake up 2-0. Sergio Cordova getting the second goal of this match here at Rio Tinto Stadium.
Second in his many weeks for Cordova, third on the season.
He picked up a stomach bug, so he is not available this evening.
Here's Rodriguez to get down. Over the top, Ulfarsson. Big save again, McMahon.
good Mexican menu.
And a hold up ourselves. Bils right there.
30 yards out, Miracle. Back post run.
All plus, getting to the international break was awesome, but I think there's a good chunk to back on in just 3 months. So it is good to and just kind of see, what was he right in the preseason, right? Things like the
Well, Justin Glad challenged himself to be more of a threat on the offensive end for the last 2 seasons.
Right, and I think that Robbie last one of them.
Back to Zach McMahon. And there's the whistle. Armando Villarreal tells us that 90 minutes of soccer have been played here at Rio Tinto.
Hector Herrera is just on his way, right? Just a couple more weeks, and he can be part of the team. And how much is that going to help? And the biggest thing, all 3 Texas teams, especially Houston. I mean, inside the playoff line in the mix. But I do think with Houston, it's they're lacking a little bit of stability. Hopefully, Herrera will bring that.
I was gonna bring that up. The word that comes to mind for me when you talk about some of the the lineup or the players that have been getting minutes the last few games. The word is depth, right? And I think that's something we're starting to talk about a little bit with Austin as well, is maybe not having the players to come off the bench and make a difference in games. They've got the depth now that they didn't have last year, where they've got pieces around the field, but as far as those difference makers, and I love to hear that Beto Avila is breaking through and getting starts, but I do wonder if maybe it's a time for Houston Dynamo, as well as Austin FC, like I talked about in the summer, to do more than just bring in Hector Herrera and hope that that's enough to push this team over the top.
Yeah, I think Seattle's the best example, right? I mean, their rosters the roster spots 1 through 30. I mean, they find use for every guy, and I think that's the problem. Right. I mean, when you look at Houston's roster, I mean, it's kind of essentially limited to 1 through 17 or something around that. It's essentially the same guys on the game day roster. You have, I think, making better use of that lower end side of the roster, right? Some of these guys from Houston Dynamo too. I think Avila's obviously getting the chances, but there's a question to be had, I think, about Marcelo Palomino and when he's going to get an opportunity. Other younger guys just bringing in younger legs at some point, right? Because you see how much that helps. And maybe parting ways with some other veteran players that haven't been putting up as big numbers. I mean, but that's their decision, and we'll see how they handle that. But I think, obviously Herrera is going to be a big plus, and we'll see if they just have the players around them to make the whole operation work.
Yeah, so quick food observation and then a question for you, Victor. So the red iguana is no joke. It's like some of the best Mexican food like outside of Texas I've had. So next time any of you are there, go check that out. But also, you kind of had as a centerpiece of your takeaways the quote from Nagamura, essentially kind of saying that we're right where we want to be. And is that the case? I mean, we've kind of seen this before, right? Where they're kind of right on the precipice of collapse, and could that be happening again?
And I think it's a little tough, right? Because I think if you look back at the games where they should have had points and had they seen those results out, I mean, because again of that big home stretch, Houston should be in the conversation for first place in the West. But it's a first year under a new GM, new head coach. I guess there were some stumbles here, right? I mean, this last stretch where you have to maybe rotate the roster a little more, and I do think there is you can point to Nagamura and the way he's handled some of the games, right? So I think I think obviously compared to last year, it's where they were and where they're trying to go. I think I agree with that. They are kind of where they want to be. But I do think they need to find, or they probably do want to find more stability to not be in 1 week, be out of the playoffs the next week, and kind of be that way the rest of the way, and then just kind of see what side of the coin they fall, come October. I do think now they're in a good spot to regroup here a little bit, and hopefully it's a little higher up, and they kind of find that. But we'll see. I think this was the biggest thing I told you guys a couple of weeks ago. As long as they can kind of stay in this spot, and Herrera can give them a big plus. But if Herrera was coming in and they're around where Kansas City's sitting in last place, and then I think that would have been a real tough rise.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure everybody wants playoffs, and I just kind of see like possible trajectory for them. It's just, kind of late in the season. It's like this roulette wheel bouncing between 7th and 8th and trying to see where they'll land.
Right. And I think that's kind of what they got to get away from, and because I always try to kind of look at who's below them, right? And I think Seattle's obviously going to rise up and take one of the spots, maybe Portland. And then you can debate about Colorado, Minnesota, or what have you, but
yeah,
but seeing at least the two teams that have essentially been in the conversation in the West, Seattle and Portland, if those two teams are going to get in, that means two teams are going to get out, and Houston's too far down the West to be playing that game.
Yeah.
To feel comfortable. Yeah, no, I hear you. And we'll have plenty of time to get into that, plenty of time to get into, any summer editions and things like that. We've got a couple weeks between matches here. But real quick, because we have those couple weeks, I think it's time that maybe the fans, you'd think that we might relax and take some time off. But no, I think that we've got plenty cooking over on the Striker Texas. Phil, Victor, and I've got one in mind too. But give me one thing that you're excited to get out to the fan base during this international break that maybe we haven't had time to necessarily work on, with the games coming thick and fast the way they have been.
I got an interview with President John Walker, a little in depth into maybe get on the other side of the business, right? We'll also try to have an update on Brooklyn Reigns and why he hasn't necessarily been able to make his MLS debut. So there's a couple stories you can get at, and obviously trying to. As we kind of count down, right? Try to look back at Hector Herrera. Not everybody is a fan of the Mexican national team, so maybe a little more deeper dive into what he's bringing.
Yeah, and I think I'm kind of, from my standpoint, definitely looking to flex some opinion muscles a little bit more while we've got the opportunity to do that. I think it's about time for another Verde Letters.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're gonna dig in, get into the mailbag this week. Or maybe
I mean, just personally, I'm excited about the international break and seeing the U.S. and how they're going to fare, prepping for the World Cup, and then certainly Austin side, we've got Pachuca coming into town, which I think is a really kind of interesting international friendly that's going to be happening, and then just obviously it's gonna heat up again after the break. I mean, there's some very, very challenging games on the schedule, so the break. I'm definitely doing a little bit of West Texas unplugging, but I'm going to have enough internet to be able to write and check on
and Westward Ho. Don't forget to upload the new podcast, the new baby in the Striker Texas, arsenal.
God's favorite conference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, we've had the opportunity. A lot of this is just about talking to other people like us in the West who follow their various teams. So we had a really good conversation this past week with 2 fans of Colorado Rapids who basically told me that I should not call them the Raps, even though I keep wanting to do that. We talked to Dr. Cacho from LAFC right after the big Austin FC LAFC matchup a couple weeks back, and that was super insightful. Got a lot of kind of views about the roster build and some of the players there and the Chiellini rumors and all that. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. And this week we're going to talk to a pretty prominent fan of both the Quakes and an AO Capo who's got a really interesting story. And so we're gonna plunge into what Quakes fandom is like. Which is quite the roller coaster.
All right, and we're way over time, but I've mentioned this on the podcast a couple times, but being able to get back in locker rooms, be able to talk one-on-one with these players has really paid off, I think, already. And one of those things was Alex Ring opening up to me about the struggles that he's gone through since March when his grandfather passed away back in Finland. He said he's going to have a chance to visit home for the first time in his MLS career, which dates back to 2017. So it's a big international break. I think a month and a couple weeks that Alex Ring has really been looking forward to, and I'll be able to share some of his perspective, and a little bit more on that story on the Striker Texas. If you want to support that, if you want to support Phil trying to get the Raps off the ground on Westward Ho, if you want to support Victor,
it does sound better than the Pids. I don't know who came up with
that. Who did come up with that? Anyway. If you want to
imagine why they're not more popular.
And if you want to support John Arnold as he hurdles toward married life, make sure you're subscribed to the Striker Texas. We'll have all the coverage that you're asking for, and I'm sure even more once you get in there and see everything that we've got. You can do that 30-day free trial. Of course, and we hope that you like what you see, but you can always tell us if you don't. Guys, enjoy this break. Even though we're not, like I said, we're not taking much of a break, but enjoy the quiet moments, not being on the road and all that. And we'll talk to you next week.